warms up for us. It should pop up on our screens. Let me get this going. All right.
Warms up.
Let's see. All right. It looks like we're live there.
Awesome.
All right. And it's not coming across to Facebook. I'm not seeing it, but that's okay. We'll worry about that later. It might pop up in a minute. So okay, so if you're ready and I'm ready, it looks like we're live. So we'll get it going in 3, 2, 1, and we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the DTD podcast. Like I've always told you, this week Christmas comes early by a day or two, but it's been all this month. We've got live people in the studio, people that we've talked to before, people that are doing big things, and we want you, the audience, to be able to come in here, ask your questions, see what's going on, and get to know these people on a whole different level. Because as we've already said before, we don't just worry about the soldier or the police officer. We worry about the whole human being and what makes them up. So any questions that you have, we want you to bring them to it tonight. Ask them. Feel whatever you're feeling about this show and let us know. Make sure you go by Please Coffee, our sponsor, at pleasecoffee.com. Check them out, DJK10 for the discount code. It's pumpkin spice season. Go get you some, and we'll roll on with the show. In the studio tonight, live, Eric Miyares. Let's get it. What's going on, my friend?
Not much, man. Just super happy to be here. It's always great to come on your show, watch your show, and as I mentioned earlier, definitely coming right behind Chris is going to be a little bit hard, man. 'Cause, I love that dude, and he's just funny. So I'm hoping I can do my part. So I might have to talk to you in Spanglish just to kind of spice it up a bit for you.
Well, I don't think you're going to have to do that. We love Chris being on. We love all of our guests coming on. And you have a lot of stuff that we've talked about and tried to transfer forward. I talked to you before we came on the show live and said we want to talk about your SGB that you had, your third and fourth one, what you're kind of doing with that and how you're kind of feeling in life, because that's always been a big thing with you is the mental. You post all the time, whether it be on LinkedIn, whether it be on Instagram, wherever it is, you're always posting. Take that mental break. You even talked about it today that your OCD was kicking in. You were rearranging the library, and just during the holidays to be able to take that kind of break and give yourself some space and some time. And I want to talk to you about that first. So let's go into the Stellet. Let's talk about that a little bit. Talk about your third and fourth, what it did, how it was different than your other ones, and what you're looking forward to in the future with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, the SGB, I'm a firm believer. I mean, it's for me, it's been. I mean, I don't want to put it like a miracle, but it's definitely something I needed, and there's science behind it. And I did it prior to when I was on active duty, but that was a really dark phase, and that was a lot of things that were going on, musculoskeletal, going to NICL, TBIs, just a slew of things as I prepared to retire. And looking back at that period, I see how it got me across the goal line, right? So that was just enough to get across, start feeling some emotion, being able to prioritize, sort of family, my child, myself. And then I think several months later, or maybe about a year later, I went back to Doc Mulvaney, Doc Lynch, those guys, and said, "Hey, I need your services, right? I need to do this again." So they make you go through the paperwork, which is easy peasy, right? If you've got the symptoms or you feel you need it, you fill it out, and then I think within 2 weeks I was back in there. And I'll tell you the beautiful thing about this one, and it was the most powerful, was I got my wife was in the room with me, and so I had been through the process, but to have my wife there, and for this one I did Doc Mulvaney. I think for the next one, just to round it up, I'll do it with Jason. But he brought my wife in, right? And so I've known him for a long time. and he's known my wife, and just to be able to have him talk with her about what we had been through in sort of the community that I was in, and why this was so important and what it would do for me. And literally, by the time he was talking, he was prepping me. I think I put the video on YouTube, but it was the 20-30 minutes after, when he leaves the room, and suddenly you just get this emotional drain, and you start to cry, right? You start to feel emotional, and your spouse is right there seeing. It's not like you can fake it, and the impact of that, to me, is absolutely processed. So this time I got to bring my spouse through the process of continuing to heal.
Well, let's talk about, because family is a big thing with you. Let's talk about how important it is that your family, and if you can touch briefly, because we talked about it, in the first show where we went full on depth about family and what had happened with the family and with your child and everything like that. Let's talk about why it was so important for your wife to be a part. Now, I know that she got to see it and things like that, but let's talk about why to you it was so important, because I think the big thing that came across in the last interview was you wanted your family to understand where you were coming from, because you couldn't quite get the words to explain to them where you were coming from.
Yeah, bottom line, you don't want, I don't want to lose my family, right? Um, you, at least for my spouse and my son, last 20 years, I've put them through things that I still can't even explain, and I won't be able to explain, right? But they've been through it, and so they're trying to understand. And my whole process, a large part of the process right now, is give back to them on, hey, this is what you sacrificed. This is the craziness that I put you through. And plus, I'm off the steering wheel, right? So now we're both, let's just say, together navigating. Once the door, once the army essentially just shuts the door behind you and says, thank you for your service. And then you've got to really go into protective mode and focus. I got to stop thinking about missions. I got to stop thinking about whatever, and focus on that family. And through my therapy and through my healing process, I realized I'm not gonna make it if I don't bring them into this, because statistically guys start to fall apart once they retire, and the marriages go to shit. And that's that time window. Once you're done, you lose your identity, you lose that sense of purpose, and now you're kind of looking back at your family. And all along the time, for me, my wife will tell me, she's like, you're an asshole. But she'll also say, all I heard was this: talk, talk, talk about family. All right, buddy, it's time to step up. And so that's one part of it, is slowly bring them into the process for them to really understand what we've gone through, what I've went through, what this huge VA packet of issues are, and how she's going to have to deal with it now. So that's why, at least for the SGB, it was critical for me to bring her in. Besides anything else that I did, and that's a healing process where we can both take advantage of it together.
So, going back over it, you and I, something that always stood out in my mind after our interview was you were talking about when you're finally done, and you're talking to your son and you're telling him, you're trying to tell him how to do something. I don't remember exactly how you were setting it up, but you were saying that he kind of looked at you and was like, look, you weren't here and I'm doing this, and now you're here and trying to be part of it, and I don't really need you anymore. I'm to the age that I need to be. Do you think that he understands it yet? Do you think that he gets maybe not the full spectrum of what happened, but do you think he's starting to understand?
Yes, I'd say he is, right, and there's a hope, but there's also a team aspect of it. So now it's me and my spouse. The gloves are off. We're able to talk about it. There's no more worrying about not saying things and hiding injuries and hiding deployments and hiding preparations. It's all about now. And as I kind of mentioned when I did a recent conversation with Tom Satterley and Jen Satterley, that was me at this phase, literally a couple of months, not even a month ago, is identifying where I'm at with me and my spouse and me and my son at 17, at his age, and going back through all that time. And we're taking one issue at a time, if you would, right? So to your point of what I had mentioned, There are things that I look at him and I'm like, I just got to kind of let him go on his own till he kind of trips a little bit. I'm like, okay, here's where I got to step in. First, trying to go back to 15 years and go, what did I miss out? Because that's just going to cause issues. And there's pieces where, I look at him sometimes. I'm like, man, I remember the pictures or his face before I left on deployments and I came back. And that's what my 17-year-old looks to me when I look at him sometimes is the 5-year-old that, at some point I captured that in my mind when I was walking out the door. So I got to let him be that 17-year-old. And there's a piece of also, some of the social media, some of the videos, and some of the, veteran advocacy, there's two parts to that, right? There's a legacy you leave. Hopefully, my family hears it and sees it. It's one way, a therapeutic way. It also gives other children to see the stories of, another service member working and trying to reunite with their family the best that they can.
Well, I want to ask, and we'll kind of move away from the family and stuff, but I want to ask one more question that's kind of floated around my mind since the last time we had a full conversation. Are the conversations with your family, are they still uncomfortable? Or have you worked through most of the uncomfortableness, if that's even a word,
Yeah.
and kind of moved on to it? Or is it still uncomfortable sometimes?
No, they're not uncomfortable. Actually, ironically, the most uncomfortable piece was a couple of days after I do a video, I post something that they're like, or at least my spouse is like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Like, why don't I know about it? I'm like, oh crap, right? Like that's the not so easy, right? That's the 2x4 that I post and I say something and then it comes, and I'll try to get ahead of the posts or the videos and go, here's what I'm going to talk about. Here's a reflection of it. But if something comes up, the conversations are much easier because a lot of that protective measure, the Pandora's boxes, the not wanting the compartmentalization for the most part is over. Like I don't want to carry that around. I know what I have to keep in the safe because that's to protect the organizations and what I did, but the rest of it is on the table on a daily basis to be able to be discussed by my spouse and my son whenever they need to.
Uh, you know, I'm glad that it's happening like that with you, that it's finally time to come through with the family. The last question that I have to that, I said it was the last one, but that one just brought up another one to me. Do you think it will ever be clear to tell them? I know not everything, but as close to possible as everything as you can, or do you think that operational security mindset and just that mindset that you lived in for so long, no matter how free you are or away from it, will keep you from telling them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is, and she's aware, right? She's sometimes feels uncomfortable with some of the things I even mentioned to her with regards to injuries or fears or hey, I can't get on that plane, or I'm having issues on this plane. Well, I'm not going to go into the operational details. I'm just going to go to hey, I've had a couple of really bad flights where I thought I was going to die in really shitty territories, and that would have ended up no bueno for me, right? Um, so she's aware that, and I've always set that limit, at least with her. Like I won't talk about it as I you know these podcasts or these conversations are about me. I share certain aspects of my family, but my veteran advocacy, anything that has to do with an organization, I won't even humor it. It's not on the table.
All right. Let's move on. Let's talk to a couple of the guys in here. We've got quite a few guys in here ready to ask questions. So let's start with Simplify EDC guy. He says, Eric, I need that magnet for my car, homie. So is there any way that people can get your signal? Of course, we have the hats and everything like that. Where can people find that kind of stuff to get your gear?
So right now, like I don't have anything to sell. I made a conscious decision that I wouldn't sell anything. I didn't want any compromises. So Simplify EDC has just been amazing, and so I have it in a little box. Hopefully this weekend, I got a bunch of few things that I'm going to ship, and so the things that have been sent out have been for folks as yourself that have supported me. There's people that I take notes that are on Instagram that they're constantly there. I've reached to that individual, and when I came in out, I've got a gift for you if you want it. I'd love to send it to you. Tell me where to send it. But for the most part, I wanted to make sure I didn't set any compromise by selling anything to anyone. So that's where we're at.
Well, that's pretty amazing, especially with as many people that want that kind of stuff because you take it very seriously. I love the hat that you sent me. I love the magnet. It's right behind me. I have the patch, everything like that. But why did you make that conscious decision to never sell anything?
I didn't want any compromise, right? I was on a nonprofit before I kind of stood out of I went on my own, and there was a nonprofit that did amazing things for a certain community. But when it went to discussing suicides, traumatic brain injuries, guns, drugs, alcohol, there were limits that certain boards don't want to discuss. I'm like, I won't have it. I don't want to, I'm going to, I have to stay within what me and my family can hold, or my spouse, can look at me in the mirror like, how the hell did you do that? So I didn't want to behold to any organization. I just wanted to be me, and this is my growth process. I think it's 8 months ago since we spoke to today. And so if I fail on my own accord, and then I get up and I move out on it. So that's been just a conscious decision, that I made early on.
Well, I love the stuff, and I hope it can get into more people's hands just to get out there, just so people can see that, because there's so many meanings to all the stuff that you have on there. All right, let's move on. Arsenio Velasquez says, does Eric listen to salsa or freestyle music?
So I listen to some salsa. We listen more to reggaeton. So even Siri knows that I got to be careful because she's listening. We listen to a lot of reggaeton.
She's
Uh,
always listening, Eric. Just so you know,
I
she's
gave up on a
always
long time ago.
listening.
Yeah, she can always listen. I don't care anymore. Yeah, so freestyle no, but salsa we do listen to it in the house, but it's mostly reggaeton, like all the time. So that's a good question. Yeah.
Uh, do you dance? I've never asked you that. Do you dance?
My wife would say horribly, but I did. I used to dance a lot when I grew up in Hialeah in Miami, right? So that's what we did. We did dance offs, and I don't even know what they're called. Like when you go to somebody would rent these little warehouses in a like a shopping center, and they would turn it into a nightclub, and you're spinning and doing all of this stuff. Yeah, I did all of that growing up. So
I think that's
not so much.
breakdancing, Eric. I think you were a breakdancer at some point. So
Oh yeah, it was breakdancing. It was all of that stuff.
that's got to mean something. All right, Simplify EDC guy, no channel donation link. Absolutely not. I don't want you guys to have to pay for this. I want you guys to get these messages out there. I hope that enough sponsors come to me and help me kind of cultivate this along. I don't want you guys to ever have to pay for this because I think these stories are so important to get out to the people. I really think that people need to understand that military, law enforcement, first responders, all that kind of stuff are more than just what they are in their jobs. They're a whole person. There's all kinds of baggage that comes with them. And I think that more people need to understand that. So no, there is no donation link. Just your support means the world to me. And tell your friends, subscribe, all that stuff. Share it. Tell possible sponsors to come see me. But no, there is no channel donations. All right, let's see. I've got one that came in from Instagram. It says, this is from Gil Gripper. It says, Merry Christmas to you both. You all know I'm an old water guy. Did CAG have dedicated water teams? Did you ever have to do any lengthy surface swims? Thanks, and throwing y'all a big shaka.
Okay, so I wasn't in CAG. Love those guys. So different organization, but within that, I did do a lot of swimming, especially early on. We were prepared to airborne in, swim. I didn't do the scuba stuff, even though I was prepped to do it when I was in the Marines. Never did end up going to scuba school. But when I got to my organization, there was no requirement, but there was a lot of swimming, just to be able to support a variety of missions. So yes, a lot of a lot of swimming. Nothing like Gil probably did, and those guys, I respect them. But I did spend a lot of time drinking some nasty water. So.
And so the reason I ask, I want to ask the question that the people write. Can we talk about your organization a little bit? Because there's a lot of raps on it. There's a lot of not talking about it. Can we give maybe a 30,000 foot view to people that have never heard you or have not heard your story?
Yeah. So, in simplicity, it's an organization within the United States Army Special Operations Command. So it's one of the variety of special units that is under USASOC and does a variety of missions. And so beyond that, that's as far as I'll go. Right.
The reason I bring it up is because it's very onesies and twosies. That's what I want people to understand, that you
Right.
had a
Yeah.
lot of covert actions.
Yeah, so it's a lot of unconventional. So on the spectrum of special operations, there's 12 different key functionalities that special operations unit do as a whole, right underneath the SOCOM umbrella, SEALs, Rangers, SF, all of those. And so some of the key ones are obviously special reconnaissance, sensitive activities. So if you were going to capture it, it's probably more on the sensitive activities, which is where I focused a lot of my time, at least the last 20 years. Before that was 2 years, 3 years within a conventional special forces unit, but I was a support enabler in 7th Special Forces Group when I first transferred over from the Marine Corps.
All right. Got a couple more that came in. Much love and respect to you, DJ, and also to Eric. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you, Duttons. I guess that's how you say it, Dutton Z's, because he's got a bunch of Z's behind his name, so I guess that's how you say it. Simplify EDC guy says, Eric is one of the only guys I know on social media who does buddy checks. So important and awesome that he does that. That's another thing that we need to talk about, because it's very true. You put yourself out there to do buddy checks. Explain why they're so important. And you and I have talked about them offline, about buddy checks and why they're so important to you. But I want people to understand that it's not just a thing that you say on your social media. It's something that you really mean.
Yeah, I absolutely mean it. And so there was a lot of what I tried to do. There's other things going on in the background to reach unique community of folks that are hard to communicate with, right? And I found that through social media or whatever forms of communications we have with a variety of my friends, and now an extended world of whoever wants to listen to my voice and to my message. Um, I maintain about 10, 15 people that I worked with that moved on, that I keep an eye on them, right? Like I literally keep an eye on them in a variety of, you can even say covert ways, right? Like I monitor their Instagrams, their social media, their spouses, because those are the guys that, plain and simple, who's hurting, right? And most times I work backwards from suicide. That's it. It's when we lose somebody, I don't want to say you failed, but we didn't provide hope. And if hope comes with, hey bro, how you doing? Or hey dude, pick up the fucking phone and call me because I haven't heard about you. I love you. I need to hear from you. Because the next thing is I'm going to call your spouse or I'm going to call your kid, because again, we hear too many. It's already statistically known. There are studies that once someone's at that point where they've lost hope, they're at the edge. It is because they're starting to cut away from communications and contact with people. So if you're realizing you can't create contact with somebody, you need to reach out. So the buddy checks, it's just a way to something you mentioned earlier, right? If I can get one person to do it and that person gets three and three gets more, you're kind of creating this sort of guerrilla warfare of going, hey man, at the core, people do care for you. Other veterans care for you, other law enforcement. You're not done once your service is done. And this can be to anybody who just needs a picker up, right? We're all human beings. And so in I reach out to my people, and I reach out to now people that follow me or people that follow others, because I think it's important, right? And there's other organizations they're doing that actually helped prompt me with that idea. SOCAF, Special Operations Care Fund did it, and a couple of other ones. And so I started to learn how they did it and figured out how it reached people in social media, and then went with it. So, but definitely, there's a lot of behind the scenes chat messages, Signal, leaving different types of ways to communicate. And I'll tell you this, it's paid off. It's paid off where there are people who've come back and go, hey man, that little message, that signal was just enough to make me back off. And I'll tell you what, that's probably one of the most rewarding texts or follow throughs that I've ever done, is to reach out really to a buddy, which is what we say and we train for. And we set this mentality, never leave anybody behind. But when you're done serving, you still don't leave anybody behind. So
All right, let's say hi to a couple more people. DSSS DJ is back. Thank you very much for being in the live. We have Dom in here. We have JP Swanson. Merry Christmas to you too. With what we're talking about, with all this kind of stuff, let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's Christmas. It's the holidays. It's the new year. And some would say the loneliest time of the year. I just saw a post that they found the commander of SEAL Team 1 dead in his house. Uh,
yeah.
what is it about this time of the year that you think hits people so hard? Because you would think, and let me pose the question to you this way. You would think with how people work and they do this job and they're able to separate themselves from having, of course, being a part of a team, but being able to separate their emotions out of stuff, it would seem like a breeze that they would float through these times, because if they're not around people, they're used to that. They did it forever in their careers. Why is this time of the year such a bad time of the year to people?
So I think there's two parts of it. So the first part is, yeah, we did it. Those guys did that. Anybody did that level of work when they served, right? I want to say, because and this is, again, I try to be factual. It's that loss of purpose. It's that loss of identity, right? And so once you lose that purpose in whatever is continuing to fuel you, motivate you, get you up, have you be able to deal with adversity, right? You lose that fuel in that tank, and then I want to say it's just, there's so much behind the holidays, right? Like, we have to get back to be with family. We have to, and I'll tell you, like, for example, like in my house, we decided this year not to travel. We have really, and I love Christmas, right? Just like everybody else does. But my spouse and I and my family, we took the pressure out of it, because I was always gone during Christmas. Most service members are gone, and so we're used to making that sacrifice. Now I can imagine you're at a period in your life, for example, maybe the SEAL commander or other military folks. And so that sense of purpose of why you were deployed before and why you didn't see your family, and maybe you don't have the family around, maybe it's just these thoughts of being gone, and it's an overwhelming feeling. So for, and so I'm saying that that's a potential in respect to me, and not feeling that loneliness, or even from our family. We just made Christmas a time that we relax, we just enjoy the moment, versus the big dinners and the gifts. Like, we don't even give gifts to each other on Christmas, and we did that on purpose, to take that stress out, so we didn't have to go to the mall, right? And we can just enjoy the day. So anyway, I think it might be part of that stress and that anxiety that comes with the holidays, unfortunately. Yeah, it was the SEAL commander, and there was like two other ones that I saw on LinkedIn that also took their lives, which is just absolutely sad, right? It's a punch in the gut for those of us that are trying to be advocates of preventing suicide. But we take it, and we move on, right?
All right, so what do? Do we double down at this time of the year? Do we do more buddy checks? What is it? And of course, there's not going to be a silver bullet that's going to cure it all. But what do we do right now? How do we make these times less stressful? Because in and of themselves, it's stressful. It's tons of family, tons of expectations that, quite frankly, are destroyed a lot. And it doesn't seem like that's ever going to change. That's the history of it, and that's how it's going to go forward.
Yeah, I think just as individuals, or just as families, again, my example, I don't know how we would do it for the populace that's at danger of suffering during this time. I would just relate to what's relieved a lot of stress in our family. And I got family throughout, definitely down in Miami, and we got them up in Buffalo. And we're like, we're not driving up, we're not driving down. We're just going to sit there and just enjoy the time and breathe. And so today and tomorrow, it's just going to be about breathing. So maybe just enjoying what essentially is the essence of the holidays, right? And I've heard, and I see that in a lot of people's messages. I get it. They're like, hey, take time, reflect, relax. just enjoy versus the whole hype behind it. So I don't have a perfect answer. I can only say just as an individual, I don't stress about the holidays. It's just I make it unfortunately be another day. But in that retrospect, is also reaching out to those that again, back to the buddy check. Those that at this time, right? It's just the elephant in the room. These guys may be really lonely and they're going to unfortunately lose hope and put a bullet in their head. So reach out to these people that the little hairs in the back of your head are telling you that this person may not is going to suffer through the holidays because they're divorced, their kids are away, they don't have enough money, right? Those are just symptoms right there. They're avoiding contact. Those are the known symptoms of people avoiding contacts. They don't want to come to parties. They don't want to have family dinners. They don't want to go engagements or award ceremonies. So when you see somebody isolating, in particular during the holidays, I think those are the people that we have to reach out to.
Very well put. All right, let's move on to some light stuff. Let's talk about some of this stuff that we're trying to get in these lives. Let's talk about your favorite movie. That's been a topic that people have brought up. Guys, make sure if you're watching, send in your questions. Anything that you want to know. Does he play an instrument? Does, we've asked him if he dances. What's your favorite movie?
Crap, man! I was trying to prepare when I was hearing you and Chris talking. I was listening today. I'm like, man, let me prep for the mission today. So I was listening to you and Chris talking. What was it? Megaforce that he said? Never heard of it.
Right? I actually found it afterwards, and I have a copy being sent to him right now on DVD.
That's how you take care of people. I love that. It's the little things that count, actually. Man, I don't know. I think I have forgotten so many things. I actually enjoy, and you guys mentioned it. I was like, yeah, I enjoy the Mission Impossibles, right? The geekiness of them. I like those. God, I'm trying to find something just on the other spectrum of them. I don't know. Since being married, like a lot of what it's kind of like the joint things that you watch together. We actually watch a lot of action movies together. But favorite movie. Like I got no idea, man. I think it just depends the time, right? It depends like I was literally, I don't know, an hour ago was listening to Duran Duran. I'm like, fuck it, I want to hear Duran Duran. It's the same thing that I might do with a movie. Crap, I want to go watch, whatever movie. So there's certain genres that I like. There's certain that I just don't like. I barely watch movies anymore. A lot of them is just, certain TV shows that I like to watch, but not the movies.
All right, well, let's talk about TV shows then. And there's one that I'm waiting to get to. I want to talk about book because I know you have a favorite book. There's got to be. But let's go TV shows. What are you watching?
Shoot, what do we just I'm watching now Capture. I don't know if you've seen that one. So it's kind of on the nerdy side. It's based in the UK and it's like a joint, CIA MI5 or whatever, and they're manipulating these cameras, and it just happened to be something that I was consulting and working on, and so that one kind of caught my attention. So that was really good. Just kind of, I try to watch TV where I can get two things out of it, right? Like if I'm watching it, but I'm learning. So I was doing that one, and God, what was the other one we just started to watch? Man, I can't remember right now. It probably has to do something with like narcos and drugs and like I like those series, right?
Well, you have a history in that's for sure.
So the funny thing is actually a lot of the movie time or the TV time I actually do it with my spouse. That's what we love doing. We love binging. We love to agree. As long as it's not this never ending 90-day fiance that never seems to end, we watch our series of TV shows together, and that's really, actually that's the time that I like. That's the time that I get to watch something we like, action type related, and just sit down with her for a little bit and just unwind and enjoy the moment.
All right, there's only one thing I have to disagree with you. I watched the 90-Day Fiance and 1,000-Pound Sisters, and it's where I get my drama. I got to admit that I do watch those shows. I hate to say it in a public forum like this, but I do watch those shows. All right.
That's because you're not married to a Latina. I have that 24/7, bro. We are three scorpions living in the same roof. So we wake up yelling at each other. We fight all day. Intermittent, I love you. We fight before we go to sleep, and we hug. So That's because you're not married to a Latina.
Okay. All right. Favorite book. Let's talk about the book.
Oh, fuck, you're killing me on that, man.
I know you have a huge library. You've got to have a favorite book, Eric.
Oh, man. That's cheesy. God, that sucks. I don't know. I'll have to think about it in the back of my head.
All right.
Really?
All right.
Wow, that's a good one.
All right. So we have some more comments that came in. Duran with a question mark. The Reflex.
Yes.
Are you a Miami Hurricane fan?
No.
No?
I didn't do sports growing up as a kid, odd enough. I did everything else that I had access to but sports. Once I as a young kid and as a teenager in high school, and then when I left to the Marine Corps, I just never looked back at sports. The only thing I think I was a fan of was just soccer, right? Because I just became convenient traveling the world to be associated with soccer. But when it came to sports, I unfortunately I didn't. I mean, I'll go to an ice skating game just because it's violent and it's fun and it's quick. But no, I don't.
All right. All right. So we have Anatoly Vasquezvich, I guess is how you say the name. What was the most unusual MOS that you saw that a guy came from, or was everyone Intel and SF? And I'm guessing he's asking working around you.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, maybe some of them would be like infantry, so an 11 Bravo, right? Very sharp 11 Bravos. I've seen. That's probably the only obscure ones. Anything else would have been, especially in the intel world. There's a wide range of them, right? So it can be interrogate or it can be analyst, whatever. That's probably more administratively. If you would, the 18 series guys, that's a little bit different. But probably the 11 Bravos coming in kind of with or the infantry guys coming through the door, but bringing some life experiences, bringing skills that were required. I think that's what got people across the door. There may have been there are definitely some other unique ones, but I would say just the good old infantry or on either side of the Army or the Marine Corps, right? So yeah, that's a good question.
All right. Simmerfy EDC guy says, please ask Eric if he has ever met Ed Calderon.
Yeah. Ed from the Cybercom commander, former 3-star general.
I don't know.
Unless there's another one I don't know.
Yes, is that I guess that's the answer. He'll probably type back up and say if that's who he's. But if that's who it is, you have met him.
The 3-star, yes. Unless it's another Calderon. That name sounds familiar, but unfortunately, it could have been Eduardo Calderon rather than Ed Calderon, right? So, yeah.
All right. All right. Jay Walker says, I apologize if I missed this or if it's been said prior by Eric in any other interviews, but was he ISA?
I'm not going to say if I was OWS, NSA, underwater basket weaving. I was USMC and Army. Those are definitely two that I was in.
Okay. All right. So Simplified jumps back in. He says, no, Ed's manifesto from the Mexican side of the fence.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I know who he's talking about. Yeah. No, never have had the pleasure of meeting him. No.
Okay. Who is he talking about, by the way?
I want to say he was on Sean Ryan's show, if that's correct. Yep.
Says that he modeled the Emerson Elvia.
I'd have to.
Yeah, I'm at a loss. Sorry. Yeah. So no, you have never met him.
Yeah, not that it doesn't draw memory right now.
Okay, let's talk about behind you. You said I got an exclusive. Let's talk behind you. That seems to bring you a lot of joy. Now, I'm hoping out of this, can you pick a favorite back there?
Yeah, I can. So you're the first one to ever get a glimpse in here. This was my, the man cave, the therapeutic room. There is a reason for this. This actually was part of my. I've mentioned it before. Like I failed at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, the traumatic brain injury clinic to finish my art therapy to do my masks. And I said, well, I like weapons. Just being in the military in general. Funny story. So this has all been a collection that has probably grown in the last 2 years. Prior to that, I only had one pistol and one bullet, and I say that jokingly, in the house. And the reason I only had one bullet, and I've said this jokingly before, is because I'm married to a Brazilian, and so I was scared shitless to come home, piss her off, right, and get shot, right. So I say that as a joke, but yeah. So I
That's
literally,
what we call kidding on the square, Eric, where you're joking, but there's a little bit of the truth behind it.
I'm not joking. It's yeah. So I'm joking. So she's like, if I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna poison you. And by the way, she's always watching How to Kill. Those
Oh,
what are
yeah.
those shows like
Yeah, I like that one too.
all the killings, and then she watches the How Not to Get Caught Killing Your Husband type shows. I'm
Oh,
like, yeah, I'm like,
listen, I'm going to give you a little hint. Keep those on your Netflix queue. So if you ever end up missing, they're going to go to that queue. They're going to see it with her name on it. They're going to start looking at her. I'm telling you, follow me on this one. So
I got drop boxes and shit all over the place just in case I die.
So, all right, so let's talk behind you. What's your favorite back there?
I would say it is the HK clone of the 416 and 417 that I built in the last year. And the reason why is I literally built that from, and I'm on my workbench right here, from like little pins like that. And so this took a year to because they're German, right? The HKs modeled after whatever variants that Army Special Operations or SOCOM wanted to build, and so that was a year-long program of as I was retiring and then I was starting a new job and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I wanted to. That was my therapy, was to search the internet, find the parts, map it out, do my research. I had some experience with HK, but not a lot. And a lot of this that's in here was, okay, screw it. I want to learn how to build it. I can build it, right? I'm in America. I get to order the parts. And so it was a pride and joy in the sense of just being able to do it, right? Ordering the parts, figuring it out, outlining. And so that kept me busy and that kept me sort of sane for a long time, to be able to have a hobby that I could still stay connected to the military, right? Like, so anything else that I did operationally, identity wise, that stayed at the command. Post that, I needed to sort of be able to remain being a military service member. Obviously, you're going to protect your family. I don't need all these guns to protect my family, but that was definitely a project that I enjoyed, and so I did a 416 and a 417 variant clone, which took me a year to do. So those are my favorite, just because of that, the level of research and putting them together that I had to do.
That can be a very expensive hobby, and yeah,
that's sad.
Yeah,
about that.
Yeah, so it can be a very expensive hobby. I've got some friends that do that all the time, that build, that do things like that. Do you ever look at? We're going to ask this in two different ways. Do you ever look at a gun and go, it was worth every penny I dropped into it? And do you ever look at a weapon and go, that wasn't worth 2 days being spent on it? Once you fire it, once you use it, anything like that. So let's go both. Yeah. Worth every penny, wasn't worth the time you put into it.
Yeah. Yes, with regards to it's worth the penny, solely because as I did it, what does your spouse says, my money's your money's my money, whatever that whole thing is. So I had to take that into consideration, right? That, hey, I'm buying these guns, and I also thought about them, of leaving them for my son, right? I just really quick, as I grew up, I never lived with my father. I didn't really know my father, and so I think the only thing I got passed on to me was a belt buckle, which I don't even know where it's at. And so as I looked into weapons, and there's an origin story of really where all of this exploded, and I went to do the investment for the firearms. There was something that I always thought that if something happened to me tomorrow, these are things that at least my son would know. Dad bought this because of X, Y, and Z reasons. So I've brought him here, and for the most part, as much as he tolerates it, he'll stay here for a little bit. I'll point it out to them why I bought him. There aren't any that I want to say that I've purchased that I'm like, crap, I shouldn't have purchased that. There's maybe variants of a specific gun. For example, the SIG 226s. I bought a couple of variants of those. And some of those were just opportunities, right? They were a good price, and this was during the COVID period, and the aspect that we thought we were going to lose, access to guns and weapons and all of that stuff. So I bought a couple of them that were a variant, and then maybe an older German, for example, like this one right here, right? It's like completely taken apart, all the way down to every little piece. So I've got 3 or 4 226s, but I love them. That was one of the first weapons that I used in a unique sense, and so I like them. Yep.
All right, we have another question that came in, then we'll go back to the guns. Anatoly asks, did you ever feel like working at the highest level, not wearing a uniform, that you lost touch with the military army lifestyle? Did you even feel like you were still in the military?
Yeah, you're always in the military. You always feel like you're in the military because there's always rules of engagement. There's always Geneva Convention. There's always, at those levels, there is less room for failure. And so, the sexiest things that you see, I don't want to say just in movies or whatever, that's the easiest. The hardest is preparing to deploy, being the person that's chosen, understanding the political ramifications, if you would, of not only making a mistake, but of fucking something up, right? To be able to caveat it. And so you do understand that you're in the military. You do understand that you work for special operations, that you represent the U.S. government, and then in other cases there may be other equities that you're protecting. The life of a constant soldier. For me, it was interesting because once I left the Marine Corps and I came into the Army, I went essentially about under a year later. I went into 7th Special Forces Group, which was a lot more relaxed, and this was pre-September 11, and this was definitely during the counter narcotics days. So just in light of that, going down to South America, that's just a different culture, and SF's really good at assimilating to cultures and environment. So their relaxed grooming standard at that time period compared to the rest of the military. So there I learned balance early on of, yes, you're working for special forces. We still have rules, right? We still have these engagements. Now, it became a little bit tougher in time when you're constantly going out the door, for me, at least the last 20 years. And, with that, and you, DJ, this too, when somebody or something fucks up somewhere in the military, then there's all of this paperwork that comes after, right? And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't matter where you work. You're still in the Army. You're still, you still have a CAT card. And so when, ironically, even the suicide prevention classes, or some of these things that we had to do as soldiers, you still have to do them. But I would say then, in the difference in people that are chosen to do this work, is that ability to go, yes, I'm in the military. I'm going to take that part, and I'm going to park it right here. I still understand that, but I have to assimilate to a certain mentality, a certain way of thinking, a certain way of acting, in order to be an asset, right? And to be able to, to be an asset for this unconventional mindset. And so, you hear unconventional, and that's literally what it means. It's and so there's a lot of folks that are really talented people. They cannot park the rigidness of being a Marine, a soldier, and even some regular soft operators still can't cross a little bit more to the left or to the right, right? So we're always in the military. Um, yeah.
Well, here's the way I would, and I think you and I have talked about it, but I started a second podcast where, in my line of work, I'm talking to undercovers that I have worked with, and we're talking about their lives. And the best way I can place it with what you're saying is when I talk to them about that, and they say they essentially live three lives. They live the undercover life, which is one persona of its own. They live the police officer life where the reports are being done, putting people in jail, all that kind of stuff. And then they live the family life. And it's a very tough balance between those three personas fighting for control over who that person is. And I think you would agree with that it's a very, very tight line that's ridden on there. And like you said, there's some very talented people that can go one of two ways. They either can't get rid of that rigidness, or they shed that rigidness way too fast and they see that other lifestyle and it goes bad. So can we talk a little bit about kind of dragging on with that,
Yep.
about riding that line?
Yeah, that line is tough, and I'll tell you, there's no army manual for it. Unfortunately, as neat as it sounds, you're still in the Department of Defense. You still work for the Army, even though you're under, the Special Operations Command. There's a lot of unconventional thinking, right? There's all kinds of doctrines or structure, if you would, for special operations on the way they conduct. So, but that line is hard. I mean, we see it today, and that's great. I love this conversation because hopefully there's you got viewers that are active duty now, or guys that are aspiring, or wherever you're going. So we saw this a lot with the global war on terrorism. All of a sudden, right? Like if we would tell somebody to take a crayon and paint what a special operator looked like, everybody's going to paint them the same way: long hair, beards, fancy uniforms, fancy kit. That's just one of maybe 15 different ways that a special operator, an environment that they need to work in. That's not a full-time identity, right? And so this kind of goes to that piece, which is sometimes you may, and it could just be organizations, right? There's organizational levels of things, and then there's individual mindsets to have that mental flexibility and go, okay, I'm okay. And I think I posted it one time showing that mental flexibility where I think it might have been early in Afghanistan. So I had a big beard. I'm wearing all the clothing, the indigenous clothing. And then I came back, and I think 3 weeks later, I had to shave and put on a suit and go in and shed that persona, that way of thinking. And that means boots, watches, coats. Just leave it in the team room, go shave, put on my clothes, put on essentially a different perspective of how to think and deal, and go from the tactical mindset to the strategic mindset, and go work, with a partner, and then prepare to deploy at the different parts of the world in a different environment with a different type of mission. And so that line sometimes is very difficult, to be able to stay on one side of it, and have the flexibility to go to the other one. But there are all kinds of things. It's all organization and stuff like that. But I think sometimes maybe this is what you're asking is folks can get lost in that, right? And it becomes, they bring back that war face, if you would, back home, right? And then that's kind of hard because you're essentially, that can disrupt the family. So if you have anything else or questions to expand it, I'd love to continue to answer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would like some more, please do put it in the questions. We'll read it out. Like
Yeah.
I said, with the guys that I'm talking to, and things that I've done in the past, there's that line that you have to watch. And a lot of guys that I talk to, girls that I talk to that have done the job that we're talking about, say that they never tell their family about any of it. They just say they're cops, they're this and that. They never. Now, there's been some times where those worlds crash into each other, where they've been places where someone they took down or someone that was involved in it was also there and saw their families and stuff like that. So there was that crossover. Did you ever worry about something like that? Because it seems on a global level, I'm talking from the level that we are at, a global level, that has a less chance of happening. Did that ever cross your mind of worrying about your family or something happening where someone comes back for you?
Oh, all the time. Absolutely. I mean, and I would submit, matter of fact, I was just doing some stuff last week with regards to special operations looking at deploying in the 2035, 2040 timeframe. And so my generation was somewhat fortunate, right? There wasn't all the biometrics, there wasn't all the artificial intelligence monitoring camera, like this stuff that I was just telling you of the movies that I was watching. That stuff's real, right? And so, you know, at least for me, I never wanted to bring anything home. Like this is my sanctuary, right? This is my family. I love defending this nation, and I would have given my life immediately for any of my brothers or sisters or anything that I needed to do. But I don't want that shit to come back, right? And so there, I, this is where you go into that professional, right? That goes into back into the role that, and I'll put it into the role. It can be a police officer who's doing undercover work, and could be maybe within special operations or folks that do intelligence work, right? Those are the three that I would say that have to live this sort of life. You got to be a professional, and there's the trade craft. You have to maintain that trade, and I'll tell you that's the hardest thing. That caused me the most amount of fights with my wife was, you're a fucking asshole. You don't want to say anything. I'm like, sorry. There's a reason. And a lot of it at the end was protecting my family, protecting my ability to continue to serve. Right? Like there's not going to be like an Al Qaeda guy's going to come and try to blow up my house. I hope not. But I'm constantly like I'm still vigilant. Right? There's a hyper vigilance, and this is part of your what you started in the beginning. All of what you just mentioned is this ungodly amount of hypervigilance, right? That we continue to maintain. The more level headed you are, the more therapy you get, the more you really understand it, the more you're able to deal with it. But just like suicides, you don't ever want something to happen to your family. Go, oh fuck, I saw the tails. I didn't pay attention whenever something happened. And so there are things that and so there was a piece of it that I also wanted with my spouse, because you don't know. I wanted to always protect the organization, what I was doing, because that's what you were told to do, and you couldn't do otherwise, right? Because you can get obviously in trouble. But I also didn't want, and when you stay in these organizations for a long time, what what happens is the spouses talk, right? Like I was in one place for 20 years. I think there's one case where we had one of the kids that grew up, and now the kid, now the man, he's at West Point. We saw this guy when he was a baby, and now he's on West Point. That's how long we know each other. And so through the years, families, when you're gone or teams leave or individuals leave, the families have to go talk. And that's the vulnerable part where you put your spouse, and I said, I had to be an asshole with you. So you literally have, plausible deniability. It's true in the sense of your spouse. I'm like, I just don't want you. And so, again, I'm still in the army. I told we don't have this elaborate stories, but if I went to Iraq or Afghanistan, hey, honey, I'm going to Iraq or Afghanistan. It's 80% of the rest of the stuff. Honey, I'm going to go do X. And the X was actually for her to be able to look at her family, the neighbors, and the other spouses and go, he went here. And that's all I know. And so that was a part of me really protecting my family. Hopefully that helps. I'm trying to make sure
No.
that I steer it in that perspective, because I think that's also what, and I'll tell you, I think it's even harder for law enforcement, because you're in your same neighborhoods. I got to fly out from a variety of airports, and then I'm out, use some tradecraft, use some technology to protect me, the mission, and my family, if you would. But the guys that are doing this look, and I have a lot of really good friends in the area and folks that I've met throughout the years that do that work. I'm like, your job's harder than mine, because you finish that operation being a bum in the corner downtown, wherever, dude, you got to go back to your house, right? Like I've got team rooms, and we've got all this other infrastructure. So yeah, that's tough work.
Well, and I agree with you. If you guys want to hear some more of those stories, it's definitely a podcast that you should pick up. Tales from the Trap. You can get on Spotify, and hear what these guys are going through, because I think it translates over between all that, and that's what is so interesting to me, is how much is the same in that kind of Venn diagram of
Yeah.
how the lives concentrate. Now I hear guys say over and over again that a police officer's life is harder than a guy in the military, and I think that could be debated until the end of time. I think it's two different kinds of stressors that kind of
Hmm.
revolve around the same things, bad guys and things like that. But I think a lot of law enforcement will tell you they know bad guys are going to be bad guys. What they worry about is losing their job, being prosecuted for making a bad decision, things like that. And that's a whole other argument, whole nother conversation, actually.
Hmm.
Simplify asked best home defense firearm, either specific or general. And he said, I think I know the answer to this.
That's funny. Yeah, I will tell you that today at my at my age, right? Like so, and it's not anything sensitive, but I gotta sleep with the CPAP machine. I gotta get to my gun, right? So like, I've got shit that I'm gonna fucking trip up. Like it's not gonna be fucking Jason Bourne sexy shit. Like I might just be wearing that fucking CPAP machine. If somebody breaks into my house, you know,
Just dragging it the fuck
under the
along.
circumstances, it's not gonna end well. But the poor police officer that walks in is gonna be like, who the what the fuck are you? Like I'm gonna have a CPAC machine. I might have shit on me, right? Like so, mine has to be something where I have a light and I have and I have a red dot because I'm not trusting. I'm not trusting. I'm not trusting my eyes anymore. I'm not trusting my fucking balance. Like it's gonna be an orchestrated fucking disaster. So for me, like there are there's guns here and then there's guns throughout the house. And I still have a teenager and I'm still not comfortable. Again, 2 years ago there was no guns in the house. It was all different kinds of measures. But it is my my 9 millimeter. So it's either my VP9 or my Glock 17 are the ones because those are armed with lights and with red dots. Also, my wife knows how to fall onto the guns, right? So I don't have a system where she doesn't know how to get into them, right? And the first thing is before I get to that gun, as many of you know, like that's a last resort right there to get to the gun. I have an alarm system. I have cameras. My fucking dogs are useless. I love them, but they're gonna be sleeping through the whole ordeal. So it'll be it'll be the alarm, and then it's just the layout of my house. I know where I sleep and where when if X happens and I go pull that gun, that my son who is still a 17-year-old, and they're gonna come out like, what's going on? And so even though you've set parameters like stay in the room, if you hear the alarm, dad's gonna go do this. And if you happen to peek, if you see a light, that's me, right?
Yeah,
Coming in.
kids don't listen though. You can put all of that into play. They're not going to listen to a thing. They're going to do what they do.
That's my biggest concern because anything that leads to my steps is my son's room. So regardless, all my angle, there's like two of them. It is I have to go towards leading towards my son's room, and then and then that's going to go down the steps, right? And so the light is his indicator that, hey bud, you need to get back in there, and I need you to go in the closet just because this is the range. The bad guys are going to come this way. I'm gonna have to say it's just like your fucking video games. You know how you play that video game all the time? That's what daddy or mom's gonna need to do. And then it's a light with a laser, but for the most part it's the light and then the red dot. So I can identify the I can identify that it isn't my son and that it is someone who should not be in my house.
Yeah, I definitely feel your pain in all those things. Getting older fucking sucks. I'm telling you, it sucks. All right. So Anatoly asks, are you concerned about where we are heading with the Eastern European conflict?
I am. Yeah, I'm definitely with the great power competition, and I say that with relations to back to the conversation that we're sort of having on the force, right? That ability, so at least with regard to, and you got to pardon me just because most of my career was in special operations, unfortunately, was it's like turning an aircraft carrier, right? Like these, I think these things don't turn that easily. And so, from the perspective of a former sergeant major responsible of troops, and also doing force modernization and doing capability development, right? It takes a long time, to build the capabilities, to fund the capabilities. There's 4 or 5 year palm cycles that take to go from the crap that we needed to go fight terrorists in Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria, and some of these other places, to then thinking that we're going to go against a great power competition, if you would, more so, at least for SOF, in, I don't know, in cities, real cities, in smart cities, in non-permissive environments. That takes money and that takes time to develop those capabilities. Capabilities aren't anything. The human is much more important than the capability is. But to then, as I mentioned, to transform an organization, for a commander to go, okay, on my 2 year watch, I'm not dealing with GWAT anymore. I'm really going to go against, the Russians or a great power competition. The military doesn't turn that fast, right? And so as that goes down from that command all the way down, and it gets down to the team rooms or the platoon sergeant, that he's like, yeah, whatever. I've been seeing this shit coming for the last 6 years. I'm still deploying to Iraq, or I'm still deploying to whatever. So my fear is, it's not even a fear. We know that's where we're going, and you can see that from from the White House to the National Defense Strategy, right? Like, it's all written out, it's all published, and when you look at it, go, okay, they said this is where we're going to go, but where are we actually to do that? And when we start doing it at the military service member, when we start telling them, hey, bud, guess what? You're training at AIT, and that's the other thing is, what are we training folks right now at AIT? What are we training our officers in their development and their understanding of the next battle to be able to go do that right now? So I'm very concerned about that, from just a basic human level. That I don't think, right, that the military, and I say this in general, that they're going, yeah, we're going to be fighting the Russians or the Chinese, especially not the Russians right now, where we're like, okay, that's not working very well in the Ukraine, but there's always more stuff going on than, especially with great power competition. It's not black and white necessarily as it is with terrorists, but yeah, that's very concerning. I have made some light posts on that about that mental flexibility, that gear flexibility to go, hey, you got to leave your G-Shock. It's just basic shit, right? Of how you're going to potentially go at that level with these adversaries.
So let me ask you a question, if you can even answer this one. When you say it takes a while to turn the aircraft carrier, that's the best way to put it, I think. How far are we out from that?
I think in an environment where you are meeting each other, let's just say Ukraine, that's a little bit different, right? We can fall into that. We can adjust to, so it's all based, we can adjust to that somewhat. Now, that's just US and Russians being in Ukraine, right? Just simply put to that. Anything beyond that in a more complex environment, I think I think there has to be some level of analysis on our ability to be successful, right? Like, are we gonna, is when we used to go, all right, we're gonna send the 82nd Airborne to go against this major city, against an element that is operating a little bit different than, again, it's not terrorist organizations. Now you're talking about going back to military. I mean, once, I don't even know what they're teaching at AIT or some of these. Are they even teaching going after a military versus going after insurgents, so on and so forth? Like, I came in and it was going after the Cubans, or going after the Russians, or going after, right, the order of battle. I don't think those are even terms. There's not even terms anymore. So,
Well, and I think, though, not to interrupt you, but I think that you would agree that, like a couple of guys that have been on the show, you saw a lot of different phases of the military. You saw that Cold War era. You saw the era where it was kind of nothing really happening, and then you saw the GWAT. So you saw essentially three different kinds of military.
well, we saw them all the time. I continue to see them, and so that's like, fortunately and unfortunately, um, there are organizations that are still working problem sets, right? So the big booger in the room was the GWAT, but there are other things going on that are from a national security. the tactical to the strategic, right? And so, and I've kind of alluded, and that was from the mental aspect of it, of having to shift from supporting or doing certain levels of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, coming back and literally going, okay, I need to take that focus, those skills, put them to the side, and bring out, the next, put down my, I don't know, just for gear, this type of backpack, and go grab my Toomey business bag. Oh, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to pull my, weaved, made, handmade bag, and then I'm going to go somewhere else. Right. And so, but those are different. That's different warfare to keep it to probably be able to pick, and so that takes a lot of mental agility to be able to bounce around those arenas and that problems. Like, because hasn't been just GWAT the last 20 years. There's been a lot of other stuff going on at the strategic levels.
I don't think a lot of people know about that other stuff that's going on because the GWAT was so in your face on the news. Everything was about that. All right. We have another question that came in. If it's not too personal, what do you and your son do for fun?
I love that. That's a good one. Now, um, so right now it is I'm trying to get him on the Joe Rogan show. I'm trying to get on the Joe Rogan show because he wants to be an MMA fighter,
Okay.
right? And so I listen, and I'm learning, and I am outreaching to my network and people, and in whatever capacity, to be able to bond with him at that right now. I remember his phase, the more vivid, before the traumatic brain injuries, the cognitive impacts, the post traumatic stress, which ended up making my life almost 15 years of a fog. When he was with Thomas to train, and we would build in the other house that we had, we would build train tracks around the whole house for him, right? And then he was into drawing, and then into Minecraft. And then, 10 years went by, and now he's this man essentially who really wants to do jujitsu and MMA fighting, and wrestling. And so what I do with him is listen, try to now go, hey bud, can I come to your matches, right? Because I was fucking never here, and so I was always gone. We were always, and I say that we, meaning most of us, were always gone when you needed to be home. And so now I'm trying to get invited into his world, and that's what I do. So I'm just trying to find touch points, where we can connect. Maybe have some personal conversations, explain certain things to him. My big one for him, I'm like, hey buddy, I love that you want to do MMA. There's these things called traumatic brain injuries and concussions that I need you to be aware of, because that kind of is going to hurt. I would love for you to first please go to college, right? Because education is very important to me. Like,
Right.
I don't think you've been tracking. Like, I'm actually in a so the one bonding piece, and something that's changed my life or changed this trajectory this summer, is I actually started a PhD program.
I
Ironically,
think we talked about it a while ago.
I think we talked about it personally,
Right.
but it was my son. And so all of these guns that are here, and again, that's just one wall. There's another wall here and another wall over here, full of guns and stuff. Most of these are the stuff that he plays in whatever video game, Call of Duties, and he won't come down here, and he doesn't care. Sniper rifles, SP5, doesn't care about any of that. Doesn't care about the kit, doesn't care about none of this. But he caught on to one time where I mentioned that I wanted to do my PhD at some point, and he asked me this summer. He's like, "Hey, Dad, when?" Off of the limited conversations, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, when are you going to get to the extent?" He's like, "When are you going to go back and finish your PhD?" And I was like, "What? Like, is that seriously important to you?" He's like, "Yeah, you've mentioned it. And I think it would be cool." And so, your kid telling you that something's cool, that, like, in the human intelligence world, is when the door opens, you go through the door, right? And I'm like, well, fuck it. I guess I'm gonna change my livelihood to where I was working, and I'm gonna figure out how to go, because if that's a beacon for him. So to the question is, I'm just trying to bond, and you've got essentially 2 years with your kid at 17, before they can make their decisions. Similar, I'm looking, going, man, at his age, I was already trying to figure out how to get into the Marine Corps and get the hell out of Hialeah and Miami and give back, if you would. So that's a great question, because that's actually two of the most important things in my life right now.
Well, I'm very glad that it's working out for you. I know how important that was and that was, I would say, in you and I talking on the show offline with each other, sending messages back and forth to each other. I think that was your toughest hurdle, was him. Out of everyone, of reconnecting those relationships, that was the toughest hurdle for you.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. Like, I had a plan that if something went fucking haywire, I was dead the next day. They were two friends of mine that my spouse knew to call, which were my mentors, and they knew how to at least talk to her. Right? Again, and this could have been natural illnesses, or this could have been the unfortunate, loss of hope. And then there was the tradecraft piece of it, which is there's a bunch of little stickies and a bunch of books that I may or may not, or be affiliated with, that may have left a breadcrumb to why your life was the way it was for 16 years, yours and your mom, and maybe if there was an unfortunate end state for me, it was because of this reason. And so that was a really hard way to think that you are leaving behind a legacy or a note to your family and a little sticky that you would hope that eventually, before they threw the books away, that they see certain things highlighted in the book, because I was still so traumatized, if you would, about talking about it. So reconnecting with family. And the Army doesn't give you, or the military doesn't give you, this manual that says, here's how you get your family back. Thank you for your service. I know you may get a divorce. I know you may put a bullet in your head. I know you may not fucking seek help from the VA, what is it, statistically, for the next 11 years, right? My biggest one that I've worked to was like, how the hell do I figure out how to fix my family and put those two to success if something happens to me?
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think it's the same way with law enforcement and first responders. When they're done with you, they're done with you. It's a number game. They're going to get another number to replace you at a cheaper rate, by the way. Yeah. And when you're done, you're done. You've done your time, and it's time to move on. And you've got to figure that out on your own, which is a definite thing that has to change. And it's thankfully that there's a lot of organizations on the outside that do that, because from the inside, it is changing, but I think it's going to take a lot longer than a lot of us think it is. All right. Yep. Same guy asks, do you still eat rice, beans? And then he says, DJ, try to pronounce picadillo. I said it right? I'm in Texas, and those are street talkers. Picadillo is right?
Claro que sí. Picadillo.
Okay, I was pretty close.
I fucking understood, man. Yeah, I still eat that. I eat that with bananas. So funny enough. Yeah.
Wait a minute. What?
Fucking bananas, buddy.
Bananas and rice and beans.
I put banana in pasta. You have been deployed, right? Or you've been really like.
But a banana?
Fucking banana. Hey, you got to get your potassium, man. You don't want to get that cramp. Yeah, bananas, man.
Okay. All right. I say it to them. No, I haven't felt that way, because I never, in my military time, never did combat. And in police work, yeah, I ate a banana if my legs cramped up and stuff. But no, I didn't add it into. I've never ever heard someone say they added it into pasta or anything like that. So I don't know. Maybe it's something I need to try. All right, we got a couple more questions that came in. All right. I think you'll like this one. How often do you get to the range?
Fuck, not enough, man. Not enough. Like, it's fucking embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. God. Yeah, there's like, not enough. And there's like a really good range, like not even 10 miles away, right? And my she's been awesome. She's like, when are we gonna go to the range? When are we gonna shoot all this fucking shoes and purses and watches and trips to Bora Bora that I could have gone on that are just sitting on your fucking wall, right? Not enough. So that's actually one of my intents for next year, is to go to the range. Actually take my son to the range, right? Take Mama wants to go, which is always good. Nothing like teaching your wife how to be able to shoot you. So yeah, not embarrassing. I will admit, not enough, right? So there's so many guns in here that it goes against my, I don't know, military ethics to just know that they're not even cited. So there are things that those that are at the ready, at the house, they're cited. Everything else in here, unless some of the sniper rifles that I took, the long range rifles that I took to an event, they're sighted in, but everything else is just, it's not sighted in. That's a question. So thank you.
All right. Opinion on guy. I think I know this answer. Opinion
Yeah.
on guys leaving their units and writing books, aka the SEAL syndrome, is what he says. But I don't even think it's a SEAL syndrome anymore.
Yeah.
And before you answer, I would like to say that some of those books are very important and life-changing to people. So let's put that out there. I understand what people say, and I understand the argument that they have, but a lot of those books, like Tom Satterley's and stuff, are very important to people and have changed lives.
Yeah. I believe that essentially almost that stigma needs to change. I'll tell you, after I think I know my first video was, Combat Story with Ryan Fugit. And I would tell you, the next day, I wanted to fucking vomit. And I was like, what in the world did you just do, Eric? Right? Like, the understanding of the purpose, the conversations with Ryan, like, don't ask me this. Here's what we're going to stay. Here's the lanes that we're going to stay in. Here's the reason. Again, to your way in the beginning, I don't want to make money out of this. I'm not necessarily into it. Made me uncomfortable. But in time, I realized the impact. I read Tom's book. I watched Tom. It was actually Tom and Chris. And I want to say later on, it was the video, and there's a point to this, the video with DJ Shipley, that prepared me, right? It was enough for me to say, check, got it, I know what I'm doing, right? And that's just sort of a mentality set that once we set our mind that we know we've thought through things, we're gonna execute, right? And so the books, and I've heard that before, and I've heard some guys that I've actually worked with or I know and I respect that said that they will never write a book. That's their choice, absolutely. But I think those that are compelled to write a book for the and there's several reasons to write a book. I think you can give back as a leader. Like your story, me sharing my story has gone against every grain in my body. At least the previous 3 years ago, for the last 20 years, I would have never talked about what I did. But I felt it was a potential avenue to be a voice. I only need one person to hear, get hope, and walk back. A person who's an immigrant that goes, you know what, I can do this. Someone who's struggling and goes, I don't know if I can really meet that standard. Here's something that I say, or someone that I point towards and goes, it's a motivator, it's a mentor, right? So also, lastly, we capture our fucking history. People, we got to stop being scared of capturing history. Like, I posted something the other day or recently about some books I just grabbed. Matter of fact, I just grabbed all the books that I can grab in my messy library that were military guys, and I specifically did that did autobiographies and or wrote about another service member. And I wanted to highlight those because if you read those are lessons learned. Those are paths that they follow. Those are origin stories. I'm hoping that people have read those and go, wow, I love that story. I can be like them, or a mom or a father or a son or a wife that goes, wow, that was just like my husband, and they can gain some kind of. So I think it's important. I think we should empower our military, which is a small, what are we, 5%, 10%, not even that, right? To write books if they're inclined to do it, within humility, within the guidelines of whatever organization you came in, right? And so I love what, and I've grown kind of slowly, developing a relationship is with Rick Prado, Cuban that came, if you're familiar with him, Enrique Rick Prado, pararescue,
CIA.
CIA,
Yeah.
yeah, CIA guy, literally walked the same streets. Well, you know, I walked the streets that he walked in 15 years ago, and that book for me was like, it's the next level of like, holy crap, that's history.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I think it's called Black Ops, right? That's the
It's
name
called
of the
Black
book.
Ops.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I respect him, good, bad, or indifferent. But I don't give a shit. Like, to me, I assimilate to that person. I can show my family. I hope it moves forward. It meets something that maybe was important to him. Just like the million other books that have been written, that maybe people are going like, those are a million other shitty fucking books, right? Like, just useless waste of paper. But I think when we talk about history and their glimpses in particular the last 20 years, this generation that has had to endure this war that has not been easy, get your stories out if that's important to you. And for some, it may not be. I like this essence of books because, I hate these fucking things, these phones. I just, you know, from a mechanism of being the dopamine that you get from going down the social media apps and stuff like that. And I hope to be able to talk about social media a little bit and sort of the dangers of it. But I love the book, right? To be able to pick up a book or pass on a book to someone, I think is still one of the greatest gifts that we can do. So hopefully that answers your question. You know, um, there's something in the SEAL DNA that whatever they went through, whatever they endured, and I love those dudes. I think those dudes are just, for the most part, almost all the SEALs that I've met in the community that I've met them in have just been rock stars, good people, just like the rest of us. We're fucking humans, and I gained something from all of the books. So yeah, I'm a firm believer.
Well, and I think there's a book in you somewhere. You and I have talked about that. I think there someday in the future there will be a book. So,
Yeah.
all
Well,
right,
actually, yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I posted it, so I tend to want to account for what I post. Yeah, I'm gonna start next year. I'm crafting, so it's actually Rick Prada, um, breaking the mold as far as coming from the CIA, right? Some sensitivities behind it, illuminating, except into what I'll quickly dispel is, I won't talk about where I came from. It's the journey. It's right. If you're interested in Eric Miyares, then be it. If you're interested in the organization, then you will not read anything about it, but you will read what that's or as I continue to post or talk about the life of serving in the military, the life of serving right, in elite organizations or in a variety of um, operations that weren't only GWAT, right? And what that does to the human. So mine is more about the human, the family, and it's sort of the mission post retirement.
All right, here we go. We got another one that came in.
Yeah.
Did SF training provide sufficient mental training to be able to handle the intense ask of an operator?
Ooh. So, for me, a lot of that is an individual's trait, right? So there is training. There's a lot in the beginning, and so in the beginning, I'll put a framework 2000s or 1999. There was a lot of hard skills, soft skills. So the skills an operator needed to do his job. The psychological, the mindset, that was almost on the individual, right? Unfortunately, because as we've kind of alluded to today, and I think you had, I want to be able to reference him really quick from Task Force Dagger.
Oh, Jeff Dardia.
Jeff Dardia, yeah. So I mean, we're in the same circles within the Military Special Operations Family Collaborative. And so there now, from my understanding from the SF community, they are, a lot more mental resilience, a lot more understanding what the impact of being a special operator is. As well as Dr. Free wrote in a really good paper. If you guys want to understand somewhat the life of a special operator, it's called Operator Syndrome, and it captures, and it's very similar, I would say, to law enforcement or to anybody essentially that deals with what's called high allostatic load, right? And that's the life you live once you go a selection and you go to these high demanding organizations. So I want to say maybe the last 5 years, SOCOM, Greater, and some of the special operations university organizations, excuse me, have focused on the mental aspect versus only the physical, right? Because anytime you think special operator, for the most part, everybody thinks physical. There's all of the endurance, swimming, and all of that aspect of it, running, whatever, but not necessarily. There's some mindset, but not the mental health side of it, right? We haven't till recent. So for me, it was, and for a lot of the people that I've known, was where they came from, right? That's what actually made, this is general, many of us really good of what we did in special operations was, unfortunately, and this is just a general snapshot, because we came from fucked up families, right? We came from harsh environments. That was a composition of the mentality of the people that they recruited that couldn't endure this, and then they came into special operations, and then you learned all the skills to be good. But I think today, and I'm very happy with some of the efforts to then focus on the cognitive human side of that operator. So great question.
All right, let's talk about social media a little bit before we wrap all this up. I know that that's important to you, so let's talk about it and talk about, because here's the thing, and I think people should know this if they don't know you personally on the social media side or personally outside of the world of interviews. You use social media frequently, and you use a variety of different ones. But I want you to talk about why you think it is, I don't know if the word's dangerous, but let's talk about how you feel about social media and how you kind of balance, because it's a very good balancing act between, oh, that's a shitty way to use social media, that's a great way to use social media.
Yeah. So I knew the dangers of social media because, in simple terms, social media, internet, is a tool to find adversaries, right? And so there was a lot of understanding of how to leverage the use of social media and the internet, in a full spectrum kind of way to find bad guys. And so as I retired and I realized that I wanted to be able, and shockingly to my spouse, who I was an asshole with her and said, never post anything about me, get off of social media, right? Like I made her life hell. Then all of a sudden I realized that the same tool I used for one aspect of my life, that now I would turn it around and use it for another reason. And that was to create reach, to reach you guys, whomever you are at that other side, hopefully military, law enforcement, spouses, family members that can help those that put their lives in harm for good. And so I said, well, let me figure out the things that I knew on the other side and figure out how to create reach. But I knew I created some guidelines. I need to be careful what I say. I need to not create compromise. I don't want to make money. I don't want to be, right. Like I don't want to be and I love these guys. I have all the respect. Tom Satterley, Mike Glover, some of the more, Jocko, some of these other guys that are out there for their purposes. And I respect those that have an avenue towards veteran advocacy. So mine initially, my stumbling into it was through something that I enjoyed, and it was literally a test bed, right? And so there are many of you that I've created really good relationships because you were there with me from the beginning, but many of them, unfortunately, were because of what's behind me, were because of hashtag guns, hashtag M4, hashtag pistol, hashtag special operations, hashtag whatever. doesn't matter. So I started to evaluate that as I went along to reach people. So with the intent of leaving a message with a photo that equaled something that can help a veteran or provide hope. And so when I went through it, it's been a journey. It's been a journey in this family. Like, what the fuck did you just post? Like, that's like the number one thing was like, why did you post that? Right? You're posting something that you really aren't doing home. So you know something in philosophy, but you're not practicing it. Well, it's a little bit more difficult sometimes, and that takes time. But there are things that I learned through therapy, that I learned through the process of wanting to heal, to be a better person. And so going using social media, I got to a point where now I've actually kind of restricted it a little bit, and a little bit more succinct in what I want to do. So I understand, like today I posted, and I did this on purpose right before we came. I posted one that dealt with an EDC layout, right? Everyday carry, sort of this layout of maybe things that I've carried or what I was prepared to carry. And I saw the numbers. The numbers went really fast, really high engagement, reach people. But behind those hashtags are military, are police, are someone that connected me at some point that said, "Hey, thank you. My family member, my father is a military, and I love your message," or whatever, right? And you create reach. And then I would do other things. I'm like, "Wow, that fucking really sucked. Nobody really cares about books." Or right, or nobody really cares about stuff, right? So I learned to do, I learned to do
Books
weapons. So
suck.
I,
I hate them.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, hey, that's the life of a special operator. It's the reality is, we account more for what we fuck up than we know. We're trained to do good things, but we also account for what we're bad at, right? It's that humility piece of it. And so I did weapons. I did working out, right? So I do or I do the, hey, get up and go now, because couple of other folks that I respect. Hey, you got to move. You got to, Mike Glover just put out I don't know if you've seen a really good post, and he's really good at it, about just stop being lazy and take care of your mental health, right? And he was very poignant about it. So I love the way he his audience. So in that point was getting up and doing exercise, right? Because I needed to do exercise, and motivating people to do exercise helps you at that mental health. I did that. I did Cafecito and Message, which is literally I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm trying to align my life. And what I try to tell people is, I know you got to go to work, but it's also good to have a kind of work-life balance. And so I do sort of a book, and I put a knife in there because those are hashtags. So all of the social media was to create reach, good reach. I spend more time actually blocking uh, nefarious attempts to my account and to the people that follow me, in a way to protect sort of that platform, to keep it sane. So behind every post, there's actually an hour of blocking crap in people, which is, yeah. But that's also a side study that I got going on those behaviors. So the social media, I think it's great. And I think we've talked about it. So my PhD now, not that I'm abandoning my platform, I'm actually amplifying my veteran advocacy by studying the cognitive impacts. So it's in cyber psychology. Cyber psychology is the intersection of human behavior and technology. You guys are right now listening to us through a laptop, to a phone, through a tablet, maybe through your smart TV. But I will tell you that even one of the things that I had to do, like, this is the phone that has Instagram and LinkedIn, and I reduced some of the other one. And my other phone is the phone that I only use to phone calls and limited emails, because I will tell you, it drains you and you get sucked a bit to it. So that's the danger. It's literally a double-edged sword. And I would submit, and this is just my practice, something that through scientific studies, it's been studied. Try to take a break from it, realize how much dependency you have on it. I just recommend a life tech balance. So I'll bring it back to you into any questions on sort of that.
Very good. Very good. Okay, we have two final questions. What do you think was the most important moment of your career?
assisting and stopping some really bad stuff that was going on. And
Okay.
and that took a lot. That took a lot of emotional strength. I mean, there was there are hostage rescues, right? That's always especially when they're your own, and it takes a long time. That was emotionally and physically draining. But there were things that we dived into that you can rest assured that the professionals, many of those that probably have been in your show, that have been involved, the level of commitment to do some of this stuff to keep this amazing country safe. Um, yeah, it's one of those.
All right. So we have a question that I'm going to kind of tie in all three together because it's from the same guy. Simplify says, does Eric ever think he might start his own nonprofit that maybe might be a place that collects for multiple nonprofits? Also in that line of questioning, does Eric ever think he might open a veterans retreat or experience like a PTS retreat, but maybe with range time with his extensive collection? And then for his final, he says, last question I'll ask. For us who don't know much about cybersecurity, what programs or companies would he recommend as cybersecurity, like VPN type stuff? So let's knock out the nonprofit first. Then we'll do like a veterans retreat experience, and then we'll do the VPN.
Okay. So nonprofit, yeah, I've absolutely thought about it. First of all, there's the community that I come from. I've a couple of former unit members. We've discussed creating a nonprofit essentially to be able to help those in a unique way. That was the first thing, but those are very intensive, right? And so I had to put that to the side a little bit and just be honest with myself and the people that were being involved, so we don't fail folks that donate money. The one way that was going to that was going to trigger, which is, and I've done it once before, which was a lot of these weapons are actually, and my wife says maybe I'm lying to myself, but I have done it, is taking these weapons or weapons and flew them. I think it was like about 20 something weapons, and I flew them to a nonprofit event that had wounded, matter of fact, there were wounded Marines. And I took them because of that notion that I'm a firm believer we don't need to take weapons away from our service members if you're scared about suicide. I think that's there's no data behind that, and so you're taking away. So I have thought about nonprofits. What I am doing right now, in all fairness, across the board, is enabling those nonprofits that I believe in, that I trust, right? And trust is a huge word. So right now, I'm an enabler for those, all the way from All Secure, Warriors Heart, Operation. Oof, I just screwed up their name. They're the ones that actually they help police and military. They actually help pay for several people's SGB shots. So
that's what I was about to say. The Stellets.
Yeah, they exactly. And so right now, I've realized that I'm much more efficient being an enabler, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay taking a step back. That doesn't mean that into the future I won't look at that, or I'm used to doing this is helping someone else be successful with the end state of helping us all, right? I don't need to be the guy who sets up the nonprofit to just say I set it up. If I can enable someone who has the time and the bandwidth to do it, then I would do it. But I definitely, that is something that because of the nonprofits that I work with, and just finding that niche. And it may just be around, because I haven't found it yet, just being around weapons, right? Being able to go to a man cap, clean weapons, in a table, shoot the shit, feel connected. I think there's something there, or even build weapons maybe. So definitely I have thought about it, in particular with regards to sort of man camps with weapons, but not at this time. I'll be an enabler for now. I just need to get through my PhD work, which again is going to support sharing the information of that cognitive aspect of being in the military. And then the third part, you said cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is, you guys know most of those answers, right? Definitely VPNs are important. You need to be careful what you post online. I post a lot of things that I'm aware of what I'm posting, and so I understand the second and third order effects of what may come of posting something. So you need to think that way. I will tell you, most of you are probably not that important that someone wants to attack you, but you may be connected to someone who is important, right? So just have considerations. It's today. It's there. There are bots that are on the internet loose, just trying to hack you. So I recommend VPNs. I recommend keeping your computers updated. Do not go and travel into an airport and pick up the cables and the little free chargers. A lot of that stuff is stuff that's being thrown in there. But I'm hoping to actually share a lot more of the cybersecurity stuff. Hopefully that kind of answered it. But yeah, VPNs, keeping your stuff updated. Don't click the stupid emails. Have multiple emails. I think I might have mentioned it to you, DJ. I've got like 8 emails, and the reason they're for a variety of things. So if you're gonna, the big one is spam. People sign up for a lot of crap, and you get lost in the overwhelmingness. You click a link, and that's how you get exploited. And like my son's like, well, so what? Well, dude, so what? You live in my house. You're on my Wi-Fi, right? And you can hack my computer, and I need to pay the bills. So don't do it. And then Wi-Fi, right? Keep your passwords, change them. You do got to have a little level of paranoia.
What a teenager answer. So what? Yeah, you're exactly right there. I The only thing I would disagree, I tell myself every day when I wake up and look in the mirror, you are important enough for someone to hack. I let myself know that. It's a little ego boost, but I like to do it just to feel better to start my day.
Cool.
All right. I want to tell everyone where they can find you. Now, of course, we talk on Instagram, you and I text back and forth, but where can people find you? Where can they find out about your message? And where can they kind of help your cause? Now, like you said, you're kind of a middleman, you're an enabler, but where can people help out in the things that you're helping?
Okay. So I've narrowed it down to Instagram. Originally, I had Echo 9 Axiom, and then I had stood up in the beginning Hopes, because Axiom had a lot of things that related to guns and training, and the creation of Hopes was focused more on maybe the medical community or people that didn't want to do. But I realized that that's actually really intensive. It's too divided. So here pretty soon I'm gonna cut away, if you would, Hopes, and just align it to Axiom, because again, I want to be able to do more of the enabling. So for the most part, it's Instagram. It's the easy way to get connected to me. If you're a real person, I'm open to the sniff factor in LinkedIn. Connect with me in LinkedIn, right? So if you're a professional, you're a real person, you have good intent, then please hit me up on LinkedIn. My profile's semi-open to receive invites. I will take a while to confirm that you're a real person on LinkedIn before we allow people into that network. I would say it's Instagram is the first one. And then even with Instagram, and thanks for this opportunity to kind of mention that. So I'm having to, because I don't have the bandwidth to be able to handle a lot of the communication. So I will narrow down the scope of comms back and forth, right? So it's going to be, unfortunately, right now, one-way messaging, as I'm now a little better at formulating the messagings that go out with the intent. And I'm going to do a lot more enabling. I'm going to point more towards people and enable their successes, just like you, DJ, and other platforms and other folks that I think they are funded and fueled and manned to do it. It's just not fair to my family and to my studies. So right now it's going to be kind of one way shot. But I still open it up to, hey man, I need help pointing towards this resource. Those are great questions. Anything that asks about where I came from an organization, I'm telling you now, unfortunately, I just won't answer it. And then many of the other ones, it just takes me a little while. I have like a little comms plan. I have to come back a couple of weeks later, and then I tend to try to get to all of the questions or comments for the most part, because I think that human connection, it has paid off. And if I may, I think it was 8 months since I've been here. It's about a year, maybe, since I first started to flap my gums here on the internet. I am so thankful and so appreciative of everybody that I've created a connection with in a variety of ways. None of you are lesser or greater with regards in my eyes. Anyone who's connected, tried to learn more of how to help, has shared their stories with me. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's just made me a better person and allowed me to motivated to continue to do this. So I want to thank all of you. DJ, I want to thank you just in case we sort of run out of time. You're doing amazing work, bringing us wanting to hear the stories. And again, and just the people that really do truly care and are vulnerable enough to connect. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You took time out to come on here. It's late where you're at, but I love your story. I love everything that you're doing out there. You and I don't think we talk as often as we should, but we try and send messages back and forth to each other.
Thank you.
I think that you're one of the real ones out there, really trying to get that cause out there, and I love what you're doing. I love that you're letting people know, no matter what you did, it's always okay to say you're not okay and to do whatever it takes to get back to it. I'll point out real quick, Simplify says that he'll be doing a charity raffle for the All Secure Foundation again, with the grand prize being a really sweet limited knife, McNeese Mac 2 Shockwave. And then he'll be doing another one in late January for, I think, Warrior's Heart. Same name on Instagram, and he loves raising for these causes. So being the middleman, there's nothing wrong with it. It helps out. And Eric, I love every time you come on the show. I love every time we talk to each other. Thank you so much to the amazing people. This has been a fantastic year for the show. We've met so many people, so much support and love from you guys. And I just absolutely can't tell you how much it means to me for guys like you, Eric, and the guys that watch this show and spend time to leave their comments, their questions, and just spend their time with this. So as always, you guys know where you can find me if you want me. You can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. And you can find me on YouTube where you guys are right now, either doing a live show or shows that are already recorded at the DTD podcast. All those conversations are in video form. Where I want to point you guys to, though, is the DTDpodcast.net. That's your one-stop shop. It's got your audio, your video. You guys can leave comments to me, and it sends directly to my email. You can ask any kind of question of me or any of the guests, and I'll try and find out the best that I can for you. Don't forget, go to our sponsor, Please Coffee, at pleasecoffee.com. If you guys didn't see it, Eric was drinking from his coffee mug tonight, the coffee that they sent to him. It's good. I'm telling you guys, I wouldn't lie to you. And it's pumpkin spice season, eggnog season, all those things. They have all those flavors. You know they're an officer-owned business. They're dedicated to crafting the finest coffees and blends, and they're shipped to you as soon as they're made to provide you with the freshest coffee available. Every batch is roasted by people who know what it means to stay vigilant, and their specialty coffees do not waste one drop when flavor is concerned. I keep telling you guys, you got to try out the pumpkin spice. You got to try out the peppermint. It is out of this world. It's some of the best you'll find, and it also helps an important cause. And here's the one that we talk about every week: giving back to our community. 50% of their profits goes towards helping family members of police officers who fell in the line of duty. Go to policecoffee.com. Get the flavors that you want. DJ K10 will get you 10% off your order. Thank you again. Merry Christmas to you guys. So much for coming and hanging out with us, listening to these stories. Tell your friends, share, like, subscribe, all those things that you're supposed to say. Let's get this message out there to everybody in 2023. We love you guys. We'll catch you on the next one. That's Eric. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll see you later.
You got it.